Landry Locker's in the house, joining Cody Stoots, DJ Bien-Aime. DJ, why don't you do your countdown, your mic check that you did for everybody?
And de 3, 4, 5, 6.
This is what you guys miss. I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cody goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Landry, being Landry, goes 1, 1, 1, 1. And then we got the French guy.
Yeah, you know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10.
This guy.
I have no idea. Yeah, you could be saying anything right now. And
I could be, but my parents, they're from Haiti, so they they're documented though. But
well, we made it 1 minute.
He laughs so I can laugh.
But yeah, they actually, they spoke a lot of Creole at the house, but they never actually taught me how to speak Creole, so I actually don't know how to speak Creole outside of counting like the 10 in Creole/French. So, like when I took French classes in college, I was always on the brink of failing. And I remember one time I had my mom do an assignment for me, and the teacher gave me an F because she was like, "There's no way you did this."
Brink of failure, aka the Texans offense.
Wow,
what a great transition.
Man, you do this, huh? All right, so let's get into this. Let's recap the 2024 season. They had the 10-7 record. Same exact record as they had last year, but I think we also all feel differently ending this season than we did last season. I guess I'll just kind of start with how I feel after the season is that there was so much left to be desired, especially in the offensive side of the ball. It never clicked. It never hit. It was always a mess for 18 weeks, and then it was a little better in the playoffs, but like I don't even count that because it's 18 weeks of BS is 18 weeks of BS. And I think that there's a lot to address in the offseason now than probably last season. So where do you sit, Landry?
I would say the expectations, because the question that's always asked at the end of these things is, was the season a success or a failure? I think there's two ways to look at it. Number one, how you felt before the season. Mm-hmm. If you had those expectations and you carried them on throughout the season, then I would say it was a failure. If you actually watched them play and adjusted your expectations, then I think they finished about where they should finish. I mean, that's really kind of how I look at it from a perspective. This is a very, 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 very unproportional team offensively versus defensively. And I'm not sitting here saying D'Amico's a defensive-minded coach, so that's the problem. Just regardless of whether it's the way that they evaluate guys, the way that they coach guys, the way that they decide who's in the lineup, the way that they function on game day, it is very unbalanced when it comes to offense and defense. And that's their biggest problem for me, is that you feel real good about one side of the ball, but you feel really terrible about the other side.
Yeah, I'm with Landry, the whole expectations change thing. Once you saw
like I came into the regular season being like, this is a Super Bowl contending team. Yeah. And then I was like, I hope they make the playoffs. I was like, well, the AFC South sucks. And then they finished in the division. I'm like, damn, okay, but also
Yeah, I mean, the expectations should have changed by about mid-season. They won a bunch of close games. The Bills game probably gave you a lot of false hope as to what they can be. Well, if they could do this to Josh Allen, maybe they could do that to every quarterback they're going to play. And they didn't always do that, and the offense just couldn't keep it together for a large portion of the season. So as the expectations changed, you kind of flip to, oh, man, they made the playoffs, but they're like the least impressive playoff team. Everybody was all about whoever the 5 seed was going to come to Houston, beat them up. They beat up the Chargers. That gives you a little bit of a nice finish, and then you knew it was going to be a Herculean task going to Kansas City. There's no shame in losing to Kansas City. I mean, you didn't – a lot of the warts from 2024 season showed up in that game, unfortunately. There's no shame in losing to Kansas City in the divisional round.
DJ, you were one screaming from the mountaintops in the offseason saying that this is going to be a little bit of a tougher year than we expected. But you also thought it was going to be because of the tougher schedule, not because the team actually regressed. Because, again, the schedule, they still went 10-7. So, the wins were still there. Yeah. I think we maybe had them even higher, like 11 or 12 when we last talked before the year. But, when you look at it, it was gross.
Yeah, I would say. I would say, coming into the season, I didn't necessarily think they were a Super Bowl team. I always said, division round still felt like my ceiling. Just the reasonings were different. Granted, I did think the interior offensive line was going to be a problem. Because, again, you had Juice, Kenyon, and Shaq, and there's just too much inexperience, and then obviously Shaq regression just made it even worse. But I thought defensively they weren't going to be as good as they actually were, so that was able to get them to the second round because the defense was just phenomenal, especially at home. On the road, they were kind of tricky, but at home, they were like the Legion of Boom at times. So
that defense was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it was fun to watch. The offense wasn't fun to watch.
Right.
It was tough to watch.
Yeah, because even like when they still had Stephon Diggs, it still felt clunky at times. And then
it was
obviously
clunky from all the time.
Yeah. You know, I think they only had maybe 2-3 games where they scored over 30. I think they only had one game when they scored over 30 against New England, right?
Yeah, that was they won for that game 41-21.
And then
they scored 34 against the Cowboys.
But
Shout out
remember,
Derek Barnett.
seven came from the defense. The offense.
You had a crazy stat.
Derek Barnett had more touchdowns than the offense over like a month stretch or something like in the second half.
Yeah. So bad.
Yeah. No, you're right. So I would say just their issues on the offensive line just came to their pass protection plan just came to bite them when it mattered most. Which is division around because in reality, like obviously, especially team playing like crap, but they were in that game. But again, like the issues throughout the season showed up at the end, you know. And again, like when you struggle at very little things, it don't matter what walk of life it is, the little things are always gonna bite you in the butt when it matters the most. And that's exactly what happened in the division around.
It's so true because you can't fall back on it. It's the simple things and it's the fundamental things of football. Like football can be really complicated on the outside. When you get to the interior, literally, it's very simple. Whose man wins that battle? And you win football games inside to outside, front to back.
Right.
And D'Amico, you know, when he talks to us, he was telling us the best teams he's ever been on have the best defensive lines. Like, that's just the way that a defense is built. So on the other side, you have to have an offensive line that can stop good defensive lines or even marginal defensive lines, which they couldn't do. Which is why I have faith that they will strongly address the offensive line situation in the offseason. But how are they going to do it? Why
I don't trust their evaluation. Like, and I don't think anyone should. Like, I don't trust anything about them on offense. Like on defense, if they sign some defensive lineman I've never heard of, I automatically assume he's good.
Settle.
Yeah, I automatically assume he's good. But I don't trust their evaluation of offense. And why would I? Like, why? What have they done for me to trust that? Even when they invest, they have more invested on the offensive line than anything. And that's the funniest thing I've seen is I see all this like, oh, it's malpractice for C.J. Stroud. You're ignoring him. He's not getting Andrew Lucked. Like you gave up, you invested more in the offensive line than anyone else. So my problem is, and my trust issues are, I don't trust their evaluation on offense. I don't trust the way they function on offense. I don't trust the way they talk about offense. So that's my problem. And there's also the question, like, are they close? And it's like, you can look at the scoreboard against Kansas City and say, oh, they were really close. Dude, 6 points for this team in the second half, it might as well be 20. Like, we went damn near a month and a half without them scoring a second half touchdown. So, like, I see, like, the point total, and it's like they're close. Nah, if you're going to function this way on offense, 6 points might as well be 17.
I mean, I think they're – man, I don't want to say they're close because they're in that conversation of the playoff team. So like when you're in the playoffs, you have a shot per se. I think that there is a large gap between the top 4 teams and then where the Texans sit.
Big gap.
But like, they're still close. They are close though because
like they're there.
Yeah,
like they're knocking on the door. It's a matter of like, is it deadbolted or like can I jiggle it open?
I agree with you, DJ. But here's the thing. I think this team this year was not close. Like, I don't think they had a chance in hell at making the Super Bowl. I think maybe they could be like the Jets with Rex Ryan, or they could have been like the Jags in 2017 and gotten into the AFC Championship game. But I don't think there's any chance in hell that they're going to win a Super Bowl or anything like that. I don't think they have that ceiling. I also think that the problems they have, if they address them properly, I don't think it's too far-fetched to think that you can improve the offensive skill guys. You can improve the offensive line. You can improve your philosophy. So it's not like they don't have a quarterback. That's no man's land. It's not like they don't have a left tackle or they don't have a cornerback, because a lot of times you can't solve those problems.
Right,
but you can find receivers, you can find tight ends, you can find more running backs, you can tweak your offensive line. It's just I don't know that I trust them to be able to do that.
Why not?
The way they function. Well, I mean, I think the offensive coordinator is. I think it's a fair question to question Bobby Slowick. I think that the way that the offensive line is laid out right now, I think they're far away there. I think they have the worst wide receiver depth maybe in the NFL from 2 down. I think Nico's good.
Well, that's because people got hurt though.
But they weren't operating efficiently even with those guys. And that's the other thing about it is last year, like when Tank Dell got hurt, I sat there and I said, damn, man, if they had Tank Dell, who knows what they could have done in the playoffs, because I had a visual of how good he was performing. This year, whether they had all 3 guys, whether they had 2, whether they had 1, they weren't functioning. So that's the problem that I have with the offense and why I feel like it's just so far away. And the other thing is Tank's not coming back. We don't know if Diggs is coming back, so they gotta figure that out. I just feel like I'm in no man's land offensively, and it feels familiar. It feels like right now, like this feels like Bill O'Brien Texans, where you're winning a crappy division, your offense doesn't function at a high level. Instead of looking at the big problem, we're talking about offensive line coaches. We're talking about personnel and stuff, but it just feels lost when it comes to offense. This is a big year for D'Amico.
And to that point, Cody, like no one on the outside, like the receivers or the running backs or TJ, you're going to look good if you don't have an offensive line. That's why it goes back to what I was saying. Like you have to start up front. And to Landry's point, he doesn't even trust that they can even go shopping for the groceries, let alone make a damn meal.
Well, Nick Casario's offensive line evaluations haven't been very good. I mean, you think
They've
about
been bad, right?
He drafted Kenyon Green, and the 2 offensive linemen that went in the first round after Kenyon Green were better players. Zion Johnson's okay. Tyler Linderbaum, who's the center for Baltimore, he's fantastic, Pro Bowl caliber every year. Like they went for a guard, the center went later, he's way better. You know, the guys that he's brought in to the equation. Traded for Shaq Mason. Yeah, Mason was fine last year, fell off a cliff this year. Like guy who played a lot of football, and they gave him a big contract. That's another thing too. Like he inherited Laramie Tunsil and he inherited rookie contract Titus Howard. And keeping Tunsil, paying Tunsil, I could have done that. You could have done that. We all could have done that. That's easy, you know.
Right.
But you didn't have to give Titus Howard that giant contract that he got. He's one of the highest paid right tackles. You dump him down to left guard, he's one of the highest paid left guards in football. And so the evaluation of the players, Juice Scruggs, he looks like a miss right now in the second round. Thank goodness they got Jared Patterson, but even then, how limited is he as a late-round pick? He was a late-round pick for a reason on the offensive line. So the guy that needs to go out there and find the players for D'Amico Ryans and whoever D'Amico Ryans has running the offense, he's had a bad run too. So it's like it's a snake eating its tail a little bit with the way that they operate on offense. So how do you adjust that? How do you change that? Well, I know, DJ, you've talked about it a bunch. Landry, you talk about change the way you operate the offense, and that changes with the guy who runs the offense. D'Amico doesn't run the offense.
And also, you mentioned Titus Howard, if they move him to guard, which I think they have to do because I think you can go out and find a tackle early in the draft. Like we've talked off camera, like we probably think maybe wide receiver first round.
Yeah.
But if you move Titus to guard, you can draft a tackle in the first round. You're not going to draft a guard. That at least opens up that possibility of using that pick there.
Blake, though.
Yeah, we can play Blake Fisher right there. You just spend a second round pick on him. Yeah, you just spend it. I mean, you got to see it through.
So you want to run it back with those names up front?
No, I want to run it back with Blake. Interior, good lord, like figure something out. Like I at this point, honestly, I'm being dead serious.
All right, so left guard is Titus. You want Blake Fisher
Maybe.
at right tackle.
I mean, like if Titus gets beat out, Titus gets beat out. Right now, you made a bad investment. So I mean, if he's your backup swing tackle / guard, that's cool. Figure it out. But with the interior guys, I would rather go get free agents off the street like right now, like than see Shaq Mason play again. And that's the other thing that really disappointed me is I hear the coaches, like we go to the press conferences every day, and I hear the coaches saying how much better the offensive line is playing the last 3 weeks. And
I hope they don't believe
well,
that.
what's happened the last 4 weeks is Shaq Mason's been out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Shaq Mason, he's immediately inserted back into the starting lineup, and it's just like, why? Like, what are we accomplishing there? And then he goes out there and has his worst game.
I watched him pull on a specific play, and the dude couldn't get there. He couldn't even get there, let alone make the block.
Which games are we talking about the O-line look better, though?
I mean, that the playoff game against the Chargers, and it was still bad.
It's still bad.
That's the thing with this offensive line.
It's still bad.
Yeah, that's the thing. It went from terrible to bad.
Better doesn't mean good.
I get it. Yeah,
better
no.
Better than horrible.
Yeah. They weren't Green Baying it out there.
No, they were not. I mean, I think they got to replace the O-line coach. I feel like a lot of O-line development stems a lot to who your O-line coach is. If you have a good O-line coach, then you can get the best out of the guys that you draft and bring in. But obviously, going to free agency and pick up some guys and things of that nature and try to bolster up the offensive line. The issue is, again, like cutting Titus doesn't do anything. It gives you $2 million in cap space. Like, that's not moving the needle just to get him off your books, because that, unfortunately, actually would make you semi-worse, ironically. You know what I mean? Because, like, you're going to get rid of Titus, who's actually fine at left guard. and then you have to do what? You know what I mean? Like everybody just says do this, you get rid of this guy, get rid of that guy, but you also have to find who you're going to replace those guys with.
There's going to be a whole lot of restructuring, I think.
They've got 2 offensive line contracts that if they had just one of those guys, they'd get rid of that guy. But you can't. It's not fiscally responsible to get rid of Titus and Shaq Mason and have to go pay the guys to replace them.
Yeah.
Like if you had some stud rookie that had like been hurt all year and you knew he was coming back, you'd be like, okay, maybe you still got to pay to replace those guys. You got to go find replacements for them if you get rid of them. So one guy's losing his job. I think we would all lean towards Shaq Mason just because of the performance.
For sure.
Like Titus still has some usefulness.
Yeah.
And then you give him the opportunity. He certainly changed his tune from I'm a right tackle to I'm ready to do whatever the team needs me to do. And so it's like, okay, well, if that's true, then let's put Titus and Laramie on the left side, have a fight for center, maybe with the guys in the building, bring somebody in, and then go get a brand new right guard. Then get the young kid out there at tackle and Fisher.
The thing about the offense, and I think y'all know this from like either talking about it or writing articles, is we can list everything. Like there's probably 20 things wrong with the offense. No, and like when you mention something, it's like, well, that's not the biggest problem. It's like, well, there's a lot. Like it's not just one. Like if you shape your lips to say, well, CJ's not performing as well as we thought CJ Stroud would perform, it's like, well, his surroundings are bad. It's like, yeah, that's true. But there's a lot of things. Well, the offensive coordinator thinks that's true. Well, the offensive line's not good. Yeah, well, the receivers aren't good. Yeah, that's true. There's not a lot of depth. Well, Dalton Schultz, like there's a lot of things. So
for sure.
When you talk about one thing, it's not necessarily to say pound the table and say this is the main problem with the offense, but there's just a lot of things. But I do think you can fix them. Not quick, but with the right decisions, you can fix a lot in the offense. Like it's clear as day.
There's a giant issue, but you've still got to treat each of the symptoms of the giant issue. So you don't want to leave one of them. Like, okay, you don't want to get a new offensive coordinator and a new coaching staff and then put a bunch of the same players on the field.
Yeah,
like you want to treat as much as you can, and coaching staffs that doesn't affect your cap dollars. Players, there's a limit to what you can do and stuff like that.
And if you want to get rid of Bobby, like, do you trust D'Amico to find the OC that can bring in a whole new staff and get exactly what he needs?
Well, all right, hold on. Let's go. Let's go with Bobby Slowick right now. What do you think should happen? What do you think will happen? Here's what I think will happen. I think he stays. What I think should happen is that he stays. However, I think they have got to bring in a guy like a Jim Caldwell or Frank Reich, not those guys.
Sure.
But someone that has been in the league for 25 years, has called plays, seen it all, doesn't want to be a head coach, and is there to help Bobby, that when everything sucks, they're like, well, let's fix it this way right now. I've seen this before. Here's how we can get through this game.
But they have Bill Lazor. So Bill Lazor's been around for a long time. He called plays in Miami in 2014 and 2015 with Tannehill. So, like, he's been around. So you technically do already have that guy who has over a decade plus of experience, who has called plays.
So what do you think is going to happen? What do you think?
I think he'll be back. But and I think he should be back mainly because, like, his first year was pretty good. His second year obviously wasn't good enough. And as long as he shows that he can fix the problems.
Well, he showed he can't. I think. But
you
have to say through 18 weeks. It's a week-to-week based week-to-week league, as D'Amico always tells us, right?
For sure.
But he hasn't fixed anything week to week.
Yeah, so I would say as much as we want to blame Bobby, like, a lot still has to fall back on the players. Like, I think that CJ, I don't want to say he regressed, but like,
no, he did.
He
did.
You can say it. I know that it's a very sensitive subject.
Regressed in it, like he got better at certain things, but he got worse at other things. You know what I'm saying? Like
he also admitted that he might not have had the right mindset. He admitted that he wasn't having fun in season. Like
he did admit all that.
Like his own words are telling us. Like when he goes up there and I thought it was a very. I appreciate the honesty, and we could actually see it. But, like, when you go up there in the middle of a season and you say the key to success is me having more fun, and then at the end of the season you say, well, I might have just thought it was too easy. Like, that tells you that's kind of like a regression.
When did he say he thought it was too easy?
I thought he said he was overconfident.
He said, I might have been overconfident and thought that I was going to do a job no matter what. Like I
remember that part.
But I mean, even if you think if regression is like too strong of a word, I don't think that you feel as good about CJ now as you.
I think his ceiling is still as high as we thought it was last year. At least that's what I think. I think he regressed.
But you can
regress.
But
I just also think he can still continue to, like, have a great career.
You can also regress progress and it not be all your fault.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
agree
it's
with-
not
that's
like
also
it's
true.
not. These are not ideal surroundings.
Yeah.
You know? So that's kind of a thing.
What do you
too.
think will happen very quickly?
Yeah, no, I think
With Bobby.
I think he'll stay. But,
Do you think they
know.
bring somebody in, or is like, hey, Bobby, just fix it?
Who? I mean, for me again, I don't think D'Amico has a deep enough coaching tree to be able to pull that many. He's only been coaching for like 5, 7. He actually became a coach in 2017.
And they're all his guys. I mean, those are his guys from the 49ers.
Like I would say,
buddies.
if you get rid of Bobby, he should try to go get Mike LaFleur, the Rams offensive coordinator, since he's played under a former defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. He spent time with Sean McVay and has spent time, obviously, with Kyle Shanahan. And I've seen him do work with an offense led by Zach Wilson.
What do you think, Cody? What do you think should and will happen with Bobby?
I think they should move on. And if you want to tap into experience to go find coaches, Nick Caserio's been in the league for 20 years. You know, you want to go tap into some of the guys that maybe he knows. And there's guys out there, like, you don't have to know somebody to get somebody interested in the job. It'd be an attractive job if that offensive coordinator job was open. It'd be better than being the OC for some of these teams that have head coaches or just hired guys or have openings. Like, you'd have an attractive situation. So you want to go pick off of the McVay staff. There's a bunch of guys over there. Nick Cayley, who they interviewed last year.
But you can't, I don't think you can bring in someone that
you
hasn't called
you
plays
can.
before.
Like,
because
going
this
into year
offense
3,
is ahead
you
of
can.
that.
You can.
Going into year 3, who though?
Josh McCown. Look,
Brother, come on.
Josh McCown's been in.
QB coach with the Vikings.
Josh McCown
He
has
didn't
been
even
in.
call plays with the Vikings.
It doesn't matter. He's been in. You talk about like a Rolodex. He's been in half the buildings in the NFL. He's going to be.
Panthers.
Someone's going to let him call plays. Like, it's going to happen.
Yeah, but I
So-
don't think a team going into year 3 that it's like about getting to the Super Bowl, getting to at least to an AFC Championship game. You should bring in a guy that's never coached.
See, I think
called
of
plays
it,
before.
you got to start somewhere, though. I think
But the starting somewhere can be here.
I think it's a personality. I don't think you can duplicate Josh McCown's resume. You can't, like, that Rolodex is through the roof. He's basically been an extra coach for X amount of years. But the problem I have with Bobby Slowick is, I think, just based on listening to him and based on watching him and watching the way he adjusts, when you have a defensive-minded coach and someone who's looked at football like D'Amico has for like 3 decades, I think you need someone who's just like a strong personality that can lead men to call the offense. I'm serious. Like, if you look at some of these offensive-minded coaches and when they bring in defensive coordinators, they don't even have to worry about it. It's not just about experience. It's just about personality. Like, we can list the examples of, like, this guy's an offensive mind. He brings in a defensive guy, and that guy oversees it. I think Bobby Slowick would be a good offensive coordinator for a coach who calls plays. Like, and I think it's kind of Matt Burke like. Like, would I want to hire Matt Burke as my defensive coordinator to call the defense? Probably not. But I think he's a good resource. I think Bobby Slowick is a good offensive coordinator for someone who doesn't actually call plays and oversee an offense. I think you need a strong personality.
So you think year 1 was a fluke for Bobby?
I don't know if it was a fluke or not. I mean, I think it is interesting because I think you brought up a good point, DJ, that he did have a good year 1, and the offensive line was shuffling around even more. I think eventually you have to adjust. Like, when we talk about C.J. Stroud coming into the year and we say, well, they have film on him and they have tape on him, I think that happens with offensive coordinators as well. And I think like the basic, it's not just about like the stats, but like the way that they function at the end of the Green Bay game, pathetic. Like, that's embarrassing. Like, that's inexcusable. The Chiefs game, like, so the first play after the 2-minute warning, you get down to the 25-yard line, and all of a sudden it almost seems like you don't even want to score. And you damn near get sacked out of field goal range. Then there's a clear situation where it's 4-down territory. They don't even know that they're going to go for it. So Spagnuolo doesn't even have to time his blitz. Like,
But
when
that's
you
not
stop
on
the ball
Bobby,
with
though.
one.
That's on D'Amico.
It could be on D'Amico. It could be on Bobby.
No, but
it
is on D'Amico.
Well, then that,
because he's the one who made the call last minute because players were coming off the field thinking that it was going to be a punt situation, and then they're like, no, you're going for it. So that's on D'Amico.
That's another issue in itself then. Like, the whole way that the offense functions. But I mean, is Bobby not going over and saying, hey, are we going here or not? Like, it's just the whole offensive function's just rough.
DJ's question about, like, you know, was Bobby's year 1 a fluke? What can he do? You have to ask yourself the question, if you're the Texans, do we have time to find out? Like, I mean, it's a win now situation. It's a take advantage of a bad division. You're going to be in the playoffs more than likely every year. What can you do in the playoffs? Like, do I have time to spend another 18-week regular season figuring out if Bobby's any good. Like, they've got to really assess this and figure this thing out.
But who's the guy that you're gonna again?
I got names. I got lots of names.
He's got 30.
I got lots of names.
30
I mean,
names.
look,
the Chip Kelly thing is not a real option.
I don't think there's a lot of guys that have called offense that you can actually go out there and get. So I do think there is a risk by having a guy.
That's a major risk.
Sure. There is definitely a risk for having a guy come in that hasn't called plays before. I get that. But I also think it's a risk keeping a guy that has called plays and wasn't very good at it this year.
All right, hold on. We got, for everyone watching on the streaming version right now on Fox Local, we're going to continue this conversation. It's going to be found on Fox Local after it's finished, and then it's going to be on YouTube as well. It's going to live there forever. So right now we're going to have the street live stream, and we're going to continue this conversation. Because here's what the Texans cannot do.
Okay.
Unacceptable is that they go into the season with Bobby, no changes around him, and nothing's changed.
Yeah, for sure.
Because then you got to fire him mid-season.
Yeah.
And then what?
They can't do that. Like, there's no way.
If you
No
fire
way?
him, and it's funny, I remember talking to somebody that was in Chicago. Well, that dealt with people in Chicago. And when Thomas Brown became the OC, the person was like, just because he became the OC doesn't really mean that much. He's just going to call different plays, but it's not even his kitchen because it's still the previous guy's playbook.
Fact.
So, like, if you go in with Bobby and you fire him, you're still going to be running his system.
Fact.
Yeah, and
So you're right.
I ultimately I think I'm leaning towards they're keeping him. Like, they're going to keep him.
Yeah, that's my vote is that they do keep him.
Well, and if they do that.
Do I think they keep him? I do. And look,
So everyone here thinks that Bobby's
he
staying.
can get better with better players. Like I'm not, but the way that they
See, that's what I don't.
But-
But hold on, I don't think so because when they were all healthy this year, I thought like everyone was out of place. It was out of sync.
Yeah.
It was a coordinating disaster.
they can get better, but if they but the way that they function, there's a cap. Like there's a strong cap on it, and you're going to be very dependent on guys staying healthy.
So I think, based off what we've seen in the run game recently, that there is progress and there is hope, mainly because they're running. Obviously, Bobby is super outside zone, and they saw a lot of too high. I think CJ saw the third most dropbacks against too high coverages. Well, split safety looks, and they saw a lot of light boxes and a lot of
DJ be bringing those stats, man.
and they saw a bunch of split safety looks. And when you try to run outside zone against split safety looks, it's actually easier for the defense to defend because now you got people on the edges because you're trying to get to the edge. You already have a light box. It's easier for people to get to the meat point. And again, like you have less margin for error.
Yeah.
Whether compared if they're in like, single high, if you can get out to that edge, now you can bust a big one. But them going duo and inside zone and more gap schemes, what we saw the past two games, that's why they had way more success. Because again, like teams are if you're sitting too high, now if I'm getting north and south, I only got to worry about the D tackle, maybe two linebackers or two D tackles, and then the linebacker or two linebackers or whatever. So like it's less people you have to worry about. So the fact that Bobby showed that he can go to that, and they actually had success. Now they have a better counter for the split safety looks. Because again, like when they were going to get split safety looks, this falls back on CJ. CJ didn't know how to play efficient football against that and just take what the defense gives him, along with Bobby also calling more plays, more quick game, things of that nature. But they were doing more of that, and that's the best way to counter that because that's what the guy that saw the most split safety looks was Joe Burrow, and he was able to take what the defense gives him and then go over the top when it was time. CJ was just trying to go over the top a lot, and some of that was CJ and some of that was also Bobby. So I think that it's not as broken. I don't think it's a broken situation. Now, they have to show that they can come up with a plan to fix it, but I don't think it's a broken situation.
Some of it was players too. Like it goes back to like it's not one thing. So there's a lot of there's just a lot, but it's right in front of you. The Slowick thing, it'll be interesting to see how they handle it. It'll be this is really like every coach goes through this. And Cody, you brought this up multiple times. Like the teams that you're trying to be outside of Kansas City or you're trying to get, they've changed offensive coordinators when they were in this area. They've changed their offense. Like Buffalo was knocking on the door of a Super Bowl. They changed their play caller.
They changed it mid-season.
Yeah, they changed it
Lamar
mid-season.
Jackson, they changed the system and he won.
After
an
year four,
MVP.
though. After year four.
No, but I'm saying like it was kind of stale. It was different times, but like they did have to make that change. So it's just a matter of when D'Amico makes it, if they make it, or what happens with Bobby Slowick and how they figure it out. But I think that's where all the attention needs to be. Like, I don't want to hear about anything on defense in the first round. Like, I don't want to, like, D'Amico, they're good. The one thing we know about
the safety from Georgia.
Yeah, that would be cheat code. That's Legion. Then we can start talking Legion of Boom for sure. Yeah. But like, the one thing we know about D'Amico is he can coach up his guys. Like
he put
very,
those
very
guys
apparent.
in position to succeed every game. It seemed like, for the most part.
Yeah.
Whereas Bobby did not put his guys in position to succeed. Like, we go back to that Green Bay game. You want to talk about out of position? Bobby's offense, especially when it mattered most. Right. D'Amico's defense, down 5 starters, was awesome. Yep. Forced 3 turnovers, did everything they could to win that game, and the offense threw up on themselves.
My thing about them keeping Bobby is,
and that was with an awesome Joe Mixon, who earned every single yard he got. Which Joe, by the way, to your point, made the offensive run scheme look a lot better than it probably was. So.
Yeah. My thing with Bobby that keep him is, how does he get better? Like you can't just leave him to his own devices to go through and look at a season and come in and be better next year. So who's he leaning on? Who can he use as a resource to go over the season and help him? Like you mentioned Bill Lazor. There's a little bit of experience. That's the only guy with experience really on this staff. I look at Baltimore. They got ex-head coaches. They got ex-play callers. They got ex-offensive coordinators. Same thing with Sean Payton's staff. They got guys who've been in the league for 25 years. You look at the Chargers. Now, I know they beat the Chargers, but the Chargers had ex-head coaches, ex-offensive coordinators. Like, you got to put some people with Bobby if you're going to keep him.
But doesn't that fall on D'Amico, though?
That's exactly on D'Amico. That's exactly on D'Amico.
Every new coach always regrets, for the most part, the lack of experience they have on their roster.
And I think DJ's done a really great job of hammering this point. And I think it's kind of like, I don't know if it's just because D'Amico's D'Amico, but he's in charge of this. Like, so like we're talking about all this stuff. And a lot of times I think whenever you're like talking to Texans fans, there's so much love for D'Amico and there's so much love for CJ that you kind of just separate them from blame. And you almost like draw a line in the sand and you say it's D'Amico's defense and then this offense. You're not a coordinator anymore. Like you're not a coordinator anymore, so that doesn't work. Like when the offense is going, you're kind of the overseer of it. So it is on D'Amico to figure this stuff out. And the other thing about CJ is, like, I don't expect, whether it's fair or not, like as far as this year goes, it might be unfair to expect CJ to do a ton with kind of his surroundings, but it's more realistic to expect him to do that than to expect John Mechie to go in there and get 8 catches for 150 yards, to expect Xavier Hutchinson to completely light things up, to expect much from the offensive line. So that's kind of the thing is, and I think it's the overriding point, like this is on D'Amico. Yeah. You're not separated. Like there's always a coordinator like on a bad team. It's like, well, his defense is doing the job, and you draw like a line in the sand. Buddy Ryan punching folks and stuff. That's not how this is. This is his ship.
Yeah, that's what kind of happened in New York, right? Like people are like, and I think Saleh's a solid coach, but like at the end of the day, like you hired Nathaniel Hackett, right? Your offense is bad because you hired Nathaniel Hackett. I get it was to get Aaron, but again, you hired Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, D'Amico has to have some uncomfortable conversations. Cecil Shorts was in here on the show, and we said the same thing, that it's your ship now. You're the head coach. You are in charge. It's not about bringing your buddies over. Not that it was always about that, but it's no longer about, hoping it works with your guys. It's about making it work no matter who the answer is.
I mean, I think John Harbaugh is probably the best example of it's tough to do what you have to do. Like John Harbaugh probably did not want to fire his buddy Greg Roman, but he fired Greg Roman. He went to college. He got an elite mind who had some NFL experience, and now Lamar's winning 2 MVPs in a row. Now a lot of that's Lamar, but they got better as a team.
But the other thing is, like, not only that, like he hired Greg Roman like after a short time with Lamar having a decent rookie season. Like he was kind of proactive. Like they could have rode that out a little bit longer if they'd wanted to. I mean, he wasn't playing bad. Sometimes you got to make proactive choices and proactive decisions, and it's on D'Amico. Like he's the overseer of this. It's just he's seen football through like one lens for a long, long time, and that was like the biggest pushback that we got during the coaching process was, well, you got to hire an offensive-minded coach. I don't necessarily agree with that, but you do have to oversee it. You have to figure out what the heck you're going to do, and you can't just draw a line in the sand and, my defense handled their business or they got to play this good.
Not my fault.
The offense.
Which he doesn't say. And he always takes blame.
And it can't just be a bunch of cast-offs from San Francisco or guys that were lower on the San Francisco depth chart. You know, like it can't be a bunch of that. All right, like you got to go out there and get guys that other teams really want, and you got to convince them to come to your spot and come to your space for whatever role that is. Like it can't just be, well, I'm going to go pick off a Kyle Shanahan staff a few more times, or oh, that guy used to work with me in San Francisco, now he's over here. Well, let's bring him here. Like you got to go out there and take some risks, take some chances, or maybe some guys
you got to be ahead of the curve in the NFL. Like you need to be ahead of the curve, whatever that looks like. And I agree with you that I don't care if you're an offensive mind or defensive mind as a head coach. I think it's talked about all the time, but I agree with that. You got to be a leader of men. But what's not talked about is you have to be an elite CEO. Yeah. Like you got to know how to handle that building, how to make hirings and how to make firings, because that is the difference. And when to cut guys, when to let go of guys, even if you like them. Like that's the next thing. So with that, what happens with Stephon Diggs?
I think they're getting for like a friendly deal, like a team friendly deal, because he's already counting $16 million against your cap anyway. So if you can find a team friendly deal that makes sense, then you should bring him back. Just so you don't have to get two guys in the draft, right? Like you can just get one guy in the draft, and you don't have to use one early. It gives you a little more flexibility. You maybe get you somebody in the second round versus trying to get you somebody in the first round or forcing that pick, because they do have to revamp the receiver room. Robert's going to be a free agent. Obviously, Tank's probably not going to play in 2025. Mechie is still, I mean, like, you know, right now, he's just a guy right now. Xavier, he's cool, nice guy, but again, just a guy right now. Like, you know, CJ's out there throwing to Jaron Wayne at certain points in the game. You know what I mean? Like, that's tough, you know. Both pass attempts to Jaron Wayne fell. Yeah. You know, so.
One, he kind of looked.
Well, you got to get the right equipment guy in here now, too. Make sure his cleats are right.
He was wearing slides out there, no cleats.
So you say Diggs back?
I would bring him back.
I'm not surprised if he's back, if you can get a very team-friendly deal, because, like, why not? Although he may not be back until, like, week 6 or 7 or 8.
Here's my biggest concern about Stephon Diggs. I got to revamp this offense. I got to change this with or without Bobby, new guy or Slowick. I got to change this. I got to revamp this. I'm going to count on a guy who's going to be 32 years old, coming off his first major knee surgery. Right.
It's going to be a one-year deal.
And he may not be there for OTAs. He may not be there for portions of training camp. He may start the season late. And I got to count on this guy? Like, I can't do that. Like, the history over the past 10 years of guys that are 30 and older that have 1,000 yards, pretty short. There's about 12 guys that did it. And all those guys are like, you know, borderline Hall of Famers, or it was like their one-off year. So it's like Steve Smith did it. Right. Larry Fitzgerald did it twice. Devontae Adams did it. Like, okay, Keenan Allen did it. How good was Keenan Allen this year as he got 1 year older? Yeah, real bad situation. But, like, Diggs is that age, and he's coming off a major knee injury. Yeah. It's like, can I rely on this guy?
Yeah, people don't talk about it enough, but receivers are just like running backs. Once they cross 30, it's over. Like, we just don't talk about it. It's not as like sexy of a topic. Like, running backs is so much more sexy. You're like, oh, don't pay this guy, no matter blah, blah, blah. But a receiver, once they cross 30, they fall off. Like, Tyreek Hill didn't even have 1,000 yards this year. Granted, his quarterback was hurt, but even when Tua was healthy, he did not look like the previous Tyreek Hill.
I think it's because you played 3 of them, you know, like most teams put 3 of them on the field every snap, you know. So I think that's why, like, if we have an old guy, that's okay. Like, you got to have everybody be able to perform, you know. Yeah.
And I also think that there's, you know, there's also like an investment that comes into where eventually, like, just like quarterbacks, once you pay a quarterback, you kind of change the evaluation. I would move on from Diggs. I'm
not against.
I would still bring a veteran. Friendly. I would still look at the veterans on the market and some of these guys that could get traded or cut, and I would still draft a receiver. But I just would move on, try to figure something out in that area, and just kind of start the next phase, because you don't need a 1 year deal. I would like for someone to develop chemistry with CJ for maybe a little bit longer than Diggs. And the other thing is, like, let's be honest, Nico misses time. So if your number 2 guy is someone who's coming off a torn ACL at that age, I just don't think that's the right way to go about things. There's a lot of guys that could be on the market that you could get around that same price as Diggs. And the other thing is, I like Stephon Diggs, but, I mean, he effed his money up. So, I mean, like, you're going to get him on a 1 year deal. In the back of his mind, he probably shouldn't have backed out of that contract. He's not going to get that back. So, I just don't know that bringing back Diggs is the right move. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, man. I think you bring him back if it's very team friendly, but you have to think team first. Like, what's good for the team, what's best for the team in that situation. Obviously we'll find out. Let's switch to the other side of the ball because I think we all feel great about the defense, especially with Sting and Kamari and Kalen Bullock, and then obviously Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter. Where do you want to? I was shocked at how great Henry To'oTo'o played this season and how good Aziz was. Not that Aziz hasn't been good, but
He was great.
he was much better sideline to sideline than I thought he was going to be. Where do they need to get better? What do they need to do? And I think
Defense?
safety is the answer, right?
Yeah, safety. Probably get some better better coverage from linebackers. And just get if you could get a workhorse D tackle, now we're talking about. Now we can talk about Super Bowl for real. Cause even if the offense gets marginally better, right, next year, if you add those pieces to the defense, they'll be able to. Because I think honestly they probably could have won last week if they had Tank or Steph.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't think that's far-fetched because I don't think that it's the Texans, though. I think it's that matchup that is kind of friendly to them because the Chiefs aren't world beaters offensively like they used to be. Jokes aside, like the officiating was so bad that extended drives that led to 10 points. Yeah. It's not why they lost.
Right.
It's not. The special teams was horrendous. But, like, you're kind of knocking on the door, and that's what's so frustrating as far as you think that they are away. If the offense, albeit tough to maybe accomplish, is just marginally better with that defense, you're so much better.
I think the other thing that doesn't get enough attention from that game is, and we said this when it happened, I think more so even than Tank, and I know Tank was a big deal, I think the biggest injury was they lost both their nickel guys.
100, I couldn't agree.
And I think if you have Petrie or Jimmy Ward out there, I don't know that Kelsey stuff happens.
Maybe.
Well, I agree.
So I think that I think that was really, those were really, really key losses, was the fact that you had to put Aziz in that position and you didn't have Petrie and Jimmy Ward there on defense. So I think that was very, 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 very costly. But as far as like defense goes, you have, where would you rank their corner duo, right? Just right now. Not even what it can be.
Probably one.
Best corner duo in the league.
Yeah. Yep.
And I would say both those guys are going to get better.
Yep.
Or Stingley can stay the same, and that's fine.
He's all pro.
That's why I asked him, like, when we were leaving, and I was like, how do you, like, get better? And I'm not, I mean, just, I guess, be healthy. Like, because.
And he was this year.
Me, DJ, and I think it was Pep Hamilton. We were talking about preseason awards, and I said, Derek Stingley, Defensive Player of the Year, because we've seen it. Like, we know what Derek Stingley is when he's healthy. They have that. They have one of the, top 5 edge duos in the league, I would say.
I don't know if there's anybody better.
It's the best duo statistically of creating pressure.
So they maybe have the best edge duo, and they maybe have the best corner duo. And I would also say that Will Anderson's going to get better. I feel good in saying that.
I agree.
So you have like the two things that teams value the most, like when you talk about position, like. And the good thing about needing a safety is that those guys slide. Like there's a lot of times where you can get like the best safety in the second round, third round, or something like that. So it's, I mean, or you can have your pick of the best guy at 25. A lot of the times in the draft you can have that. Defensively, I feel fantastic.
I love Jalen, keeping Jalen. I'm worried it was just about Jimmy if he can stay healthy because
that was a weird extension. I mean, that was just kind of strange.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jimmy's as good at nickel as Jalen. I mean, and he was an NFL top 100 2 years ago playing it. So
you should find some depth to back up Jimmy there in the secondary because he's going to get hurt. So find some depth that you could trust to put on the field right away. And then DJ mentioned defensive tackles. Great defensive tackle draft. Great defense. The draft.
Look at that smile.
The draft nicks are already all over defensive tackles. Like, man, this defensive
you
tackle
and Paul Thompson
draft.
going to get together and hang out.
Yeah. So you want to draft a defensive tackle second round, third round, and that might be a guy you can put on the field right away. In addition to Mario Edwards made $2 million this year. Like, go find you another Mario Edwards.
Tim Settle.
Tim Settle was damn good. They found Tommy Togiai in the middle of the season, and they played him a bunch. And he had sacks and tackles for loss. And I think Landry's point earlier, you trust D'Amico Ryans when he tells you a defensive lineman's good. I'll believe him. And if a guy hadn't been good somewhere else, maybe D'Amico's crew is going to make him even better. So, from a defensive perspective, I think it's just fine tuning and depth. Like, I don't think you're really
talking top 5 defense next year. Like, it's not even.
I mean,
like it's
I didn't even. They ranked top 5 in total defense this year. And obviously, they were top 5 in sacks and interceptions. Like,
And that's without an offense. You know, it's
Yeah, how many times the offense put them in a weird spot?
I mean, look at the Chargers game, for gosh sakes.
Yeah.
Like,
The other thing I like about the defense too is, like, we always talk about like the year 2 body shaming, where like a guy comes in, he comes in year 2 and it's like, dang, that dude's jacked now. Like Toto said he was fat,
Yeah.
and that he came in. Like, I think Bullock and Lassiter, I think they're going to come in and you're not even going to recognize them, and they're going to take it to another level. Like, if those guys take their play to another level, like we're talking about like impact guys, I mean, that's a scary thought for the defense. So as much, it's good to talk about the defense after you talk about the offense, because it's like the perfect balance. But the sky's the limit for the defense. I don't even know how aggressive they need to be, but if they get even better, it's scary.
You know, they just fired the team president.
Wow.
what, just like right now?
Yeah, while we was on. Yeah,
Oh,
they just fired the team
There you go,
president.
open up the email.
Yeah.
That's Greg
Yeah,
Grissom?
Greg, yeah.
Greg. I loved Greg. He's been here since the beginning.
I love Greg too. Greg's
What
a
do-
great guy. Is that just business driven? I mean, that's all he has. He has nothing to do with football operations.
He has much to do with full operation, right?
Nah, and it was kind of they've kind of like transitioned into kind of like a new approach a little bit. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
with that new guy that helped, you know,
Doug?
with Doug.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not the firing everybody wanted to hear about. They wanted better. Well, we wanted Bobby news. Gee.
Oh, all right.
pour one out for Greg Grissom. Shout out to you, my friend.
I do like
like Greg.
some Greg.
Good guy.
All right.
Unless he got fired for something I don't know about.
Yeah.
Dump that. Dump that.
You gotta be so careful these days. Like, well, here's Landry Locker.
Right,
He said he was
right,
a stand
right,
up
right,
man.
right,
and he's
right.
yeah. It's good. My experiences were good.
You think they cut Danico Autry?
No.
No, because his
No.
cap hit's 10.5 million next year.
Maybe then.
No.
If you do cut him, you save 5.8 million.
But you could probably, make him take a pay cut. But I mean,
They love him.
I say
they
that-
love him.
I love his mindset.
yeah.
I love what he brings to the team. I just,
You're
to
also
your
gonna
guys'
get-
point, Mario Edwards made $1 million. Tim Settle made $2 million. He's gonna make $4 million next year.
Well, I mean, you're gonna get a full season of Autry next year. Like,
Ideally.
you know, that's he missed the time because of the suspension, but you know, you're gonna get a full season of him next year. That's what I'd be excited about. You know, you can have that third pass rush presence outside of Daniil and Will Anderson from the jump. You don't have to worry about, again, you get rid of a guy, you got to replace him. Like, Barnett's a free agent. You get rid of Autry, and you're still looking. They love to rotate those
Or you
guys.
could go in other areas
It's
and
like a-
replace that. Like you could.
It's like a hockey change on
Go
the
the
defensive
offense.
line, so they need bodies. You know,
Are we gonna bring up Dalton Schultz? Like if we're talking about all this stuff, like I feel like we've how long we been
Hell,
going?
hell, we
how
talked-
long we been going?
52 minutes.
We've been going 52 minutes talking about everything that's wrong with the Texans. We haven't even mentioned Dalton Schultz and the fact that they basically franchise tagged Dalton Schultz twice last year. They gave him pretty much guaranteed money this year and the upcoming season, and he was the worst blocking tight end I've ever seen. You look at the tight ends that signed with teams in the offseason for
nothing.
20% of it, and they produced. That's another one, and that's the most discouraging thing for me from a long-term situation is I think they've lost the one thing that you kind of hang your hat on. I think they've missed the opportunity to take advantage of C.J. Stroud's rookie deal.
Yeah, because
Like-
next year's the last.
yeah,
that last year.
that's it. Like, you
really
gave-
took advantage of
quick.
it.
You gave Titus an extension. You gave Dalton Schultz $13 million. You have all this. Like it's over. Like you didn't do it. So that's gone.
But
They spent like
I-
$70 million on the defense
But
last year.
I will say this, let's say, if CJ doesn't, take a massive leap in year 3, like he'll still be on his rookie contract because at that point you can't really extend him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can't, because I think there's gonna be a certain point where the quarterback market stops going the way that it's going, right?
Not if that Netflix
maybe.
and Apple TV and Prime money keeps fluxing in there. It's gonna
For sure, but I think because we're probably gonna see with Brock because again Dak is getting 60 million a year.
Yeah.
Is Brock gonna get 61? You know what I'm saying? Like eventually there's gonna be a team that says, nah, we're gonna stop this right now.
But that's what I don't know that it's going to happen because you can't get rid of a guy that can play this position 'cause
Right.
it's so hard to find one.
No, but I'm not saying get rid of him. I'm just saying
Right, but the issue
62
is all it takes is one team to be like, we're good, we'll do it.
But what I think what
Okay.
DJ's saying is don't Trevor Lawrence yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas Lawrence got this massive contract, And none of us are still sure if he's actually worth the massive contract.
Right.
Like, you don't want to do that if CJ doesn't look good in year 3. But if CJ doesn't look good in year 3, you might be in bigger trouble than that. You know? Couple bucks on the salary cap ain't gonna fix that.
I think he'll look good in year 3.
I do
just
too.
you know,
He'll be better.
Well, let's not let Dalton off the hook.
Yeah, Dalton.
What do you do to fix the tight end room?
Just whatever any possibility possible. Like if you get to 25 and Tyler Warren's there, like he can be a good receiving threat. He can be a better blocker. He can be all that. If you get to round 4 or something like that, and Gunnar Helm out of Texas is there, don't be shy. Like bring him in and put him with Brevin Jordan, put him with Stover, and see what happens with Schultz. But there's a number of things with Dalton Schultz. First of all, why are you asking him to block? Like I don't like that's
thing.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. But the way in which like that contract looks now is like I know the offensive line's the easy target, but man, like $13 million a year the next 2 years. What did Jonnu get? $4 million?
Like $6 million.
What did Zach Ertz get? Like $2 million?
Zach Ertz was basically nothing. Same with
what did Fant get? Like $5 million? Like it's like you literally
Gesicki in Cincinnati got like nothing.
Gesicki, like it's just crazy that contract and the way that one looked. That doesn't get enough attention.
The tough part about the tight end room is it feels like 2 of 4 spots already spoken for, like 3 or 4 spots in the tight end room. You know Dalton's going to be on the team.
Dalton, Brevin, and Cade are all going to be there.
Yeah, but you get to training camp. Brevin doesn't look good. Pretty easy to
They
move
extended
on.
him.
Yeah, but it's
a
a very small deal. So if it doesn't look good, you write him a check. You make him go away. Like Landry mentioned a tight end in the draft. Like, okay, now you need a tight end in the draft, and maybe you need a wide receiver in the draft, and then also maybe you need a guard in the draft,
and all those picks aren't going to hit in year 1.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, maybe you want one of those good defensive tackles, and then, well, you need some depth to replace guys that are eventually leaving on defense because they're going to get new contracts, and it's like all of a sudden the shopping list gets real long because you've made a mistake and you can't trust the guy that's the highest paid guy in that room. And I think the additional element to Dalton Schultz not playing well is if you want to play the body language game.
But that's never been good even when he's playing well.
It looks worse when you're bad.
No, I know, but he's never like looked that way. But yeah, it was weird because I was watching Kansas City and it was like a chip almost. I mean, when I saw their tight ends chipping, and that's as simple as like putting an elbow on them, like while the tackle's engaged. Bigfoot and Santa Claus might as well have been getting into a plane together or something like that because it was like something that I've never seen before, like into a UFO. Like honestly, like it should have been Bigfoot walking into a UFO when I saw a chip block because I haven't seen that from Schultz this year.
Well, and they watch it every week, and they watch Daniil get destroyed by people with the chip blocks. Like
he did against KC
every week. I feel so bad for Daniil Hunter. There's just guys just flying in like missiles, and then Dalton's like.
There is no desire to be physical from him.
No,
and that's the kind of scary part.
But the other thing is, it's always been that way too, which is kind of goes back to Bobby. Like we just bring it back to.
And so then you got to start. Okay, well, if he's sort of a receiver only guy, what exactly is Cade Stover's role? Is he kind of a do it all guy? Do I go get a do it all guy? Can Brevin block better?
I think Cade Stover's going to come in looking jacked. He strikes me as someone that in year 2 we're not even going to recognize him. Like he strikes me as someone who like is going to be. He's not even going to be able to put his pads on.
He's going to look like one of those.
He's going to be like the best blocking.
One of those wrestlers in the 90s that goes away for 6 months. They come back and it looks like you took the air pump to him.
Yes.
He's going to look like that. Yes. lot of hay to get bailed to get that strong.
Farmer boy.
Yeah.
What do you got, Deej?
I mean, when it comes to Dalton, I think even with the blocking stuff, even like because I remember there's some like where he gets matched up on the DM, but some of that is just the pass protection plan and Steve Spagnuolo setting it up with a sim pressure to get Chris Jones matched up on Blake Fisher or get a DM matched up on Dalton Schultz. I think unfortunately it goes back to like just the offensive coaching and goes back to what is the plan is. You know what I'm saying? But then Dalton, they did not do a good job of at times doing the grunt work. So I mean. What do you do with Dalton?
You can't do anything. You pay him too much money. He's stuck.
It's basically another franchise tag. Like they
Yeah.
franchise tagged him twice. Like I think the price for franchise tag last year was like 12.
Yeah,
For
so
tight end, and they basically gave him 2 years, 24 guaranteed, and then you can get out in the third year. So they basically franchise tagged him twice.
When it comes to like the stuff with the offense, I wonder if D'Amico sits there and he's like, I could beat this offense in my sleep.
Well,
Like,
they did in camp.
That's what I mean.
And that was
He
the other
did.
thing.
We all thought that, like, man, there was one day in Ohio, right? That like the offense looked good. And we were
Dude.
like, oh, there it is.
That is my biggest regret. And I was talking about this, like, DJ, you remember when we were all sitting in the tent. I think it was me, you, Stoots, and someone else. And we were like, man,
Probably
the
Alexander.
defense is kicking the offense's butt. And we would ask about it, and they would always say, well, we try to make it look extra hard for CJ here, and we might not be doing like what we would do in a game, but we make it look extra hard. We should have known then, like, that this was like going to be.
The defense
a
is always
defensive
ahead
team.
when it starts. It's like, yeah, this is week 4 though.
yeah. I remember that because up until you went to Cleveland, right?
Yep.
Up until Cleveland, the offense looked like crap.
Yeah.
It didn't-
But they only had like one day in Cleveland.
They had like 2 days in Cleveland. The first day they looked really good. I know you remember. They looked like they was going to the Super Bowl that day. CJ looked incredible that day. You know what I mean? Like Steph was getting open. It was special.
Yeah.
The next day it was more like, it was
The
more
defense fought back.
Yeah,
a
the
little
defense
bit.
fought back a little bit. But that was it.
And that legitimately might be the only 2 days the offense won a day in training camp.
Yeah.
So the audience has to hold us to it. We got to keep a win counter in training camp next year.
Yeah.
And that'll give
It
us a
matters
good-
though.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like, I got a friend he covers the Chargers named Chris Rim. He like laughs at me every time. I'm like, bro, training camp matters. Like what training camp looks like matters.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
like you'll be able to have a good assessment of how the team is going to look based off what you see in training camp. If the O-line can't block in training camp, they probably can't block in the season. If receivers aren't getting open in training camp, they probably aren't going to be able to get open in the season. You know what I mean? Because, like, even though you're going against your defense, that's still an NFL defense. No matter how bad it may be or how good it is, that's still an NFL defense. If you can't perform against that defense, why should I think you're going to be able to perform against other defenses?
That defense, when you know what they're calling most of the time, too.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You almost got to like anticipate, like when you put out what happened, you almost got to try to figure out the why. Like when Mario Edwards Jr., God bless him, great season, but when he looks like Warren Sapp in training camp, like there's probably a reason.
Yeah, we should have known that Foley Fatukasi and Mario Edwards were not Aaron Donald made over. We should have known that.
Good players, but
exactly,
they look like
exactly.
that. There's something going on.
like it's rare where if you see something in training camp and it's bad and it turns good in the season. There's plenty of times you see things that are good in training camp that don't pan out in the season. That happens all the time.
There's a ton of training camp MVPs.
Yeah,
that
plenty,
you never
like-
hear from again.
Like you weren't here in 2022, but I know y'all remember Brandon Cooks looked like the best receiver in the NFL.
Oh, yeah, he was
during
nice.
that camp. He looked incredible.
He was nice.
But again, like when the season came around, obviously his quarterback was Davis Mills, and that was that. So
Man, he's an all-time practicer, man.
yeah,
He was a good
Brandon
player
Cooks?
too. He was a good player. Don't get me wrong.
yeah.
But like in practice,
he looked incredible.
Man.
He looked incredible.
Yeah.
But again, like but if it looks bad, like we should have known when Dameon Pierce was ripping off run after run after run in 2022. The run defense was probably going to be bad, But we didn't think they'd be historically bad, but they clearly were going to be bad.
All right, let's put a bow on this. What has to happen this offseason, Landry, for them to at least get to the AFC Championship?
offense, and CJ has to take the next step, whether that's surroundings, whether that's personnel, whether that's all of the above, one or the other. The defense is going to give you a chance. They're going to give you a chance. You have to have a good enough offense to be able to capitalize on the chances that they give you. So they need to figure it out on the offense in pretty much every area, not just one.
I would say that D'Amico Ryans needs to give his offense the best opportunity to improve, however that is. If that's keeping Bobby and putting new coaches in, if that's firing Bobby, getting a new staff, if that's letting the draft and free agency money be spent on offense, but it's up to D'Amico Ryans to give his offense the best chance how he sees fit.
Yeah, I think I'll echo everything you guys said. Just offense. So
Can't
again,
get that anywhere else.
You know what I
Hey.
mean? You know what I mean? Like they got to fix that. If they fix that, then they can legitimately get to a Super Bowl. Like I think the defense is good enough, and I think the only team they don't match up well against defensively is obviously Baltimore. But outside of that, I think they match up great with everybody else. I think they have the pieces you need to be able to be that Super Bowl. Because, we always talk about offense. But to get to the Super Bowl, you need your defense to play incredible for the most part.
Especially in the AFC.
Especially in the AFC. Like, even though, the Bills, they won, but the defense forced multiple turnovers. They forced 3 turnovers, and that was the difference in the game, right? And then the Chiefs, even though they didn't force any turnovers, they made sure they kept the Texans' offense, unfortunately, out of the end zone a bunch. So I think that's what it really comes down to, is can you consistently, play after play, have a good defense, and they have that. And offensively, they got to have one that can get you to 24, 27 points in the playoff. Because you're not going to – most games don't turn to shootouts, especially in the AFC. I know we think about, you got Lamar and you got Mahomes and Joe Burrow, you got Josh Allen. Most of the AFC playoff games, playoff teams, it's in the 20s for the most part. Even when Mahomes got to the Burrow got to the Super Bowl, the defense was incredible to stop Mahomes from scoring in the second half. You know what I mean?
And you think
20s, whoa, that's
I think you
got a long road to travel for the current Texans.
You got to at least be able to have multiple ways to win.
Yes.
And the Texans only have one way to win right now. You got to at least in a perfect world, you don't want to be in a shootout, but you got to at least have multiple ways of what winning a football game looks like. They don't have that right now.
Yeah, I think right now is when we're going to really find out how good of a head coach DeMeco Ryans is, which includes that CEO part.
Yeah, bingo.
You can come in and you can build your staff, you can have your plan, and it all works. And then everyone else adjusts to you. Not everything goes according to plan. It's like Mike Tyson said. You get it? Everyone's got a plan until you get hit, punched in the mouth.
Yep.
How does DeMeco go from plan A to plan B now? Now we're going to find out how good he is. So I think that's about it.
But we know he's good. Just how good?
Yeah, he's good. He's good at running his defense.
That's
How
a
good
good
is
point.
he running a franchise
That's a good point.
in works with
good
Nick
point.
Caserio?
That's a good point.
Like the best franchises in the NFL have stayed together for a long time. They have a good GM, they have a good head coach, and then it all kind of trickles down from there. Obviously, you have your pillars in pass rush and quarterbacks, but they also have the ability to adjust. That was what Bill did so damn well, is he got rid of players that everybody liked because it was just time, or he got rid of coaches or coaches moved on, and he was able to replace them. He was able to adapt and adjust and change.
And he had
Can
Tom
DeMeco
Brady.
do it?
And he had Tom Brady.
Yeah, of course.
I would use the
for sure.
Ravens as I don't have Tom Brady example of they feel like they're always in it and they are constantly churning this or churning that or a player. And for a long time, they didn't even have any good wide receivers and they were still getting it done.
Zay Flowers being a Pro Bowler being the first Pro Bowl wide receiver in Baltimore Ravens history was an insane
That's
stat.
nuts.
That true?
Yeah.
That's crazy right there.
Torrey Smith didn't make it that one year?
Nope.
Damn.
And neither did Steve Smith
Nor
that
Steve
one
Smith.
year. But they always had older guys.
Did Jacoby make it as a special teamer?
Well, that doesn't count as a wide receiver.
Yeah.
All right, tell everybody they can find your work, Landry.
SNL Locker Room on YouTube. We'll be at the Combine as well, so we got you covered there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Locker Room on YouTube, SNL.
Now, Cody Stoots on YouTube, and then Houston Football, HOUfootball.com.
Find me at ESPN.com under the Texans page, or on Twitter at DJ Bien-Aime. Just tweeting some of my thoughts.
All right, I'm going to end on this. You can just give me one position. That's the only thing you can say. What should they draft in the first round?
Wide receiver.
Cody?
Wide receiver.
Take your time, dude.
Offensive line.
Boo!
So that's got to be a tackle because you're not going guard. All right, with that, we're
Going
going to
in the
end.
trenches with DJ.
Comment below, share, click, subscribe, do all that 9 yards. All right, thanks for watching Kickin with Kunkel.